An empty space stands still and bare. The sound of footsteps then fills the air. Look up, look up, look up and see. What color will it be?
Orange!
What is orange?
My balloon is orange.
What else is orange? A carrot is orange. Clownfish are orange. An orange is orange. Can you spot anything that's orange? Spicy orange to make tasty orange. Delicate orange. Just hanging around orange. Underwater orange. Majestic orange. Beautiful orange. Bouncing orange. You can see orange in lots of places, can't you? You can use paint to make art.
What colour is this?
Orange.
Do you know how to make orange? Yellow and red. Mixed together, make orange. Using paint is a great way to make patterns. You can use lots of materials to explore orange.
Okay, everyone, let's make a piece of art. Are we ready for that?
Yeah!
Excellent. What we're going to do now, we are going to cover this cardboard front and back with everything orange. Now, what have we got on the table that's orange?
Peppers. It's soft and it comes out of a bird.
Is orange a soft or a bright colour?
Bright!
I think it's a bright colour. So are we ready to make a nice bright tower with our shapes?
Yeah!
Fantastic.
Orange is a bright colour. We use it so we can see things easily. It's the color of safety and rescue. Orange is the color of autumn. Of pumpkins, warm soup, and bonfire night. Orange is a bright color that is all around us. When yellow and red get together and swirl around, orange appears. Orange wants to be first in the pool, to glide through the blue ocean, and explore every leaf on every tree. Orange wants to rise and shine, and squeeze every drop from the day, to throw, catch, and turn each footstep into a crunch, to make new friends and speed to the rescue. To warm, chilly fingers, fizz and crackle and wake the stars.